Everybody. We're going to start. Good afternoon. My name is Philip Christians. I'm chairperson of SCOPA. Next to me is Mr. Dustin Davids. Mr. Zed Kloot at the back there. I'm going to give the members opportunity to do themselves, then the AG and the AC. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair and everybody. I am Benedicta van Minnen, a member of this committee.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Peter Johnson, member of this committee.
Noma French Bombo. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Seblan Africa, Engagement Manager, Auditor General.
Nadia Leroux, Auditor General.
Good afternoon, Chair. It's Comfort Bunting, Audit Committee Chair.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, honourable members. Tasneem Adams, Stakeholder Liaison Manager, responsible for the Western Cape AG office for the last time. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. My name is Sep Mohlomi, Auditor General Office. Thank you.
Online? I see online.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Andrew Davids from the Audit Committee.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and colleagues. Basil Petrus.
Thank you. Member, just introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Grant Murray. Good morning.
Thank you very much. AG, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Afternoon, members. We're going to start. Some of the TDGs are still on their way. There was a confusion with the time, but the minister and the HOD says we can start, and maybe when we're done with introductions and introductory remarks. So let's start. My name is Philip Christians, Chairperson of Scopa. Next to me is Mr. Dustin Davids, Mr. Lizette Kluter at the back there. I'm going to give the members opportunity to introduce themselves, then the minister and the department members online when the members here has introduced themselves. Then I'll give the members online, and then we'll go over to the minister and the HOD to introduce themselves. Over to you, members.
Good afternoon. My name is Nomin Kondloman, alternate to this committee.
Good afternoon. I'm Benedicta van Minnen.
Good afternoon. I'm Khalid Sayed. I'm I'm a member of the Education Committee. I'm sitting in for this meeting. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Peter Johnson, member of the Public Accounts Committee.
Good day, I'm Grant Marie. I'm not a member of this committee, but I am here today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Noma French Mbombo, member of the Scopa.
Good afternoon, honourable members. My name is David Mania, Minister of Education.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and colleagues. I'm Basil Petrus, member of Scopa.
Good afternoon, Chair. Wendy Kaiser-Pilanda.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Brent Walters, HOD for the WCD.
Afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon, members. I'm DG Corporate Services, also the CFO as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. Ignatius Supriya, Director, Inclusive Education Specialized Support Services.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Washila, and I'm the Director, Internal Control. Thank you.
Afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Matthijs Cronje, Chief Director, People Management Practices.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I'm Rian Eisen. I'm the Director for Management Accounting.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chair and members. Erna Veldman, Chief Director, Financial Management.
Good morning, Chair and the members. Zukisani Mpisi, Director, Financial Accounting.
Thank you very much. Anybody online?
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Blanche Cancross, Internal Audit.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Ritson van Rensburg, Provincial Forensic Services.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Beatrice Simpson-Murray, Internal Audit.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Comfort Bunting, Chair of the Audit Committee.
Thank you very much for the introductions. I'm going to give the Minister and the HOD just to do introductory remarks. And then after that, we're going to go straight into, then I'll explain how we're going to go navigate the way forward. Over to you, Minister.
Thanks, Chairperson. As some honourable members know, we appeared before the Standing Committee on Education, and at that meeting I made extensive opening remarks. I don't think it's necessary to make any further opening remarks. My preference is to get stuck in. After my HOD might want to make some comments.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. I don't want to make long opening remarks. I did make opening remarks in the previous committee, but what I do want to say is we did have a budget of 33 billion, which is the most that we ever had as a department. And we spent 30.383 billion of that, spent 99.8%. That's the one point I would like to make. Other point I'd like to make, which I think is relevant for this committee, we did get an unqualified audit with some findings, which I'm sure the committee will take us through. That's the second point. And then just perhaps a third point, Chairperson, in the performance indicators. We did achieve 46 out of the 52 performance indicators, which is 89%, which is also amongst the highest achievements we've had for a while. And we are here to present ourselves to the committee. Thank you for the opportunity. That's all I want to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister and HOD. Members, we're going to do part C. That is 146 to 159. That's governance. Then we're going to go over to part E. That's page 199 to 239. That's the PFMA compliance report. And then lastly, we'll do the financial statements 241 to 348. I allow, the way we do it, 2 questions per member. Then you have opportunity to follow up. And then if there's a next round, we will then do the next round as well. So that is how we do it here. So we're going to do governance first. Members, anyone for questions on governance, part C? Member Nkondlo and then Member Pat Lekker. Member Nkondlo?
On page 152, on the fraud cases, I see there are new cases that 9 new cases that were submitted to the PFS. I just want to understand, in terms of your fraud detection process, if you can share how that process works as part of your fraud prevention plan, how that process works, and these 9 cases, how did they come about? That's my first question, Chair. And then on page, I think the last page, yes, on page 159, on the BBBE compliance, I'm not sure I understand what is your response on the question of are you developing or implementing a BBB, because here you refer to an accounting officer system. I'm not sure I understand what that means. Are you saying you're not implementing the BBBE? You've got something else? I think I would want to understand what do you mean with that response in that table in page 159. Thanks, Chair.
Member Lekker?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to check, Chairperson, in relation to page 150, page 150, under the fiscal uncertainty causing overloading of the education system. That's the first bullet in page 150. I want to check what are part of the reasons that are as a result of this, where there's uncertainty. What led to these reasons? But also I want to check in terms of the ineffective school governance, is a repeatable risk that cycles every 3 years. What exactly is happening and what are the interventions put in place by the department in ensuring that doesn't happen or to mitigate that? But I'll come back, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me just ask my question and then I'm going to ask Member Said. I'm also on 150, a key emerging risk for the following financial year. And it's a second paragraph, the end there, the safety incident statistics as a key risk indicator show that the rise of safety incidents beyond the pre-COVID-19 levels, which indicates that schools may not have handled safety and related issues. If you can just elaborate, that's a key emerging risk. And Member Said?
Chair, thank you very much, Chair. Look, mine does not deal with the issue in a specific page, but it's related to the overall issues around issues of compliance in particular. I'm just triggering back from, I think, the previous term when we sat in Scopa around this particular annual report. That, and then we also raised it the year before that. There was quite a bit around the Special Investigations Unit report on the tenders given to Masekame Trading in the department, and there were certain recommendations that they made. I don't want to take us back, but I just want to get a sense as to what's the latest in that regard in terms of implementation. Has the matter been resolved? Where are we at? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. No other questions? HOD, Minister and HOD.
Okay, so I'll ask the CFO to deal with the first two questions. Could start off there and then I'll go through some of them as well. CFO, please. Thank you.
Sorry, just before you start, the other members are in. I know there was a miscommunication with the time, so I just asked the HOD ministers if we can pray. You see, I was in the meeting, I said 2:30, so you listened to the procedural officer that said 2:45, but that's fine. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Our bomb squad has arrived.
Chair, good afternoon. My name is Saleh Abrams. I'm the DDG for Education Planning.
Alan Meyer, Deputy Director General, responsible for branch IDC.
Good afternoon. Bertram Lauriston, DDG for Curriculum and Assessment Management.
Ian De Vega, Chief Director for Business Intelligence Management.
Yeah, Chairperson, just around the question around the forensic cases. So it's to say that obviously we work in conjunction with the Provincial Forensic Services. They perform the task of forensic investigation, but the department don't have their own competence in that regard. So the cases that we're referring to here is at school level. And as you know, Chairperson, they work with school fees, parents' money, but also government money. But we treat them in terms of oversight. We treat them as part of our oversight to make sure that governing bodies can correctly account for those for the expenditure relating to. We do provide schools with the financial manual. And we also provide training to the staff there, but also to governing bodies. So just in relation to the question in terms of mitigation, we do provide training for governing bodies as well. And they change every 3 years, but we do provide training and ongoing training as far as in some cases, or in this particular case, financial management and other areas as well, recruitment selection and other areas as well. So the 4 cases that have been referred to is not in the department per se, it's not in head office and districts, these are in schools, and there are in some cases third parties involved. So our district officers, they have staff, which is called school resource officers, that regularly goes out and visits schools to make sure that, if I may just put it in layman's terms, to make sure their books are in order. And in some cases, they detect anomalies, and that particular cases, they refer them to forensic services. So we have a close relationship with forensic services. In the past, forensic services also provided training to our district officers to pick up certain anomalies. And of the 9 cases, 5 of that was picked up by district officers, and that was be referred to forensic services. With a scope of 1,500 schools, Chairperson, obviously it's an ongoing process. As governing body elections happens, I think the new ones kicked in place this year, beginning of this year. So obviously that heightens the risk around, or the financial risk around those, or in particular schools especially, where there are new members. In some cases, governing bodies do have members that's financially qualified, so there we don't have an issue. But in some cases, we need to provide ongoing capacity training and so forth. So we also have whistleblowers as well. That also comes through on the hotline, Provincial Forensic Services hotline. That also then deals with that. Then in that particular case, we had about 2 cases of the 9 was whistleblowing cases that came through the hotline, which we obviously will refer them to forensic services as well. Chairperson, just in terms of consequence management, obviously, once forensic services have done the investigation, there will be recommendations. If there's a criminal case, they will refer that straight into SAPS. That will go to SAPS, and we do the follow-up in that regard as far as the follow-up is concerned. I think, Chairperson, if you remember, there was a case that came through last year from Atlantis, which was about 11 years old, around a fraud matter where governing body members were arrested. So, yes, Chairperson, we work hand in hand with forensic services, but also with SAPS around the criminal element that's happening in our schools as well. So that's just in terms of the detection. We go out and inspect schools' books, and in that way we'll pick up if there's matters as well. Then there's also the hotline that whistleblowers can phone. And then obviously if governing body members themselves suspect certain things, they will refer matters to us as well. And it's just not money, there's also issues of nepotism, because there's different types of fraud that happens as well. But for this particular case, these are all in our schools that's happening around. I'll ask Ms. Feldman just to respond to the BEE matter as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the relationship between the question and the response, the implementation of a provincial procurement policy, our AOS, which stands for the Accounting Officer System, sets out all the regulations and rules in terms of the supply chain environment. So within the AOS, we also cover how the provincial procurement should be applied in our procurement processes, aligned with the regulations. So therefore, we respond as yes.
Thank you, Chair. Can I go on to the other questions? For me?
Safety risk.
Yeah, I've got all the other questions with the budget cut and so on. Chairperson, so maybe just to indicate, there was a question about why was the fiscal uncertainty in terms of, I think, ma'am, you asked that question. So the reason is because for the first time, certainly in the living memory of officials here, the budget was actually cut in here. So normally what happens is you get a 3-year budget, and then before the time you get told in the year before, then it's firmed up, then you go into April. But when we got to June, they said, hey, hang on, man, we actually have a problem here. We thought you were going to get 10 Rand, but you're actually only going to get 9 Rand. Now, for a department like us, which is this big tanker, we do 3 to 5 year planning. Then we got specific plans for 1 year. That is very hard for us to then maneuver out of that. And that's where the risk came in, ma'am. That's the actual risk. The risk comes because no certainty was given. And I did say to the committee before that I have been in front of committees for a long time, more than 20 years, appearing in front of committees, but I've never seen a budget cut in the year. And so that's the risk. That was the risk. Then Mr. Eli touched on the question of the repeatable risk, Chairperson. The repeatable risk is that the SGB process is a democratic process, and each year you have election of SGBs, because only parents can obviously serve on these committees. Parents change over time, so then you land up with some people who are inexperienced in governance matters, governing your school. And so then that presents a particular risk that we actually had mentioned to the department. As Mr. Eli explained, we've got the SROs, we've got very many programs to train SGBs, to try and make sure that they do comply. But what that is, let's just say it's the cost of democracy, in that's the cost of democracy, because normally in a system, you'd be able to build the capacity over a long period so that, say, by year 5, 6, you then don't have to worry. Except now in many schools, we get the issues that arise. So that's that risk. Then on the question that was asked by Mr. Sayed on the SAU matter on Masikwami, I have said before in this committee, but I will say for the record again, that matter is settled, Mr. Sayed. There was disciplinary action envisaged against 3 people, but eventually only 1 person was given a final written warning, and no further action was taken against the other people. So the matter is handled, Chairperson, and closed. This is from years ago. If I could ask Mr. Meyer, if he maybe just can talk a little bit about safety and security at schools. There was a question about that we haven't answered. Certain schools are often disrupted by various events such as gang violence, theft, and damage to property. And how do we deal with some of these safety issues, Mr. Mayor? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. My apologies for not getting the full question, members, but I'll try and respond. So if a school is approached in terms of a criminal activity that happens at the school, our first line of defense is to say that the school must call the Safe Schools call center. Particularly if it is a metro school, we request the school to call the call center because our call center is also linked to the TMC of the City of Cape Town, which could then allow for very rapid response of whatever services are required, whether it is law enforcement or metro police, but also of the SAPS. So we've got direct links between our call center and people in the SAPS call center, for example. So our staff is able to action, staff to respond to the schools fairly quickly. In each of our districts, we also have a Safe Schools coordinator with field workers as well. And they would also go out and assist the school if there's any incident that happens at the school. Our focus within Safe Schools is firstly preventative. So we look at target hardening strategies. So we put in the alarm, we put the electrical operated gate, pedestrian gate as well with intercom systems, etc., so that whoever arrives at the school has to log, at the gate that they are there, announce that they are there. The secretary opens the gate and they're allowed to come in. And of course, that the gate should be closed and not let anybody else through. So that's the purpose of the target hardening that we do. We also do preventative work in the school in that the school safety committee constituted by staff members, also members of the governing body. Also, the local police station is encouraged to have membership on that particular school safety committee. That committee also has direct access to neighborhood watches, etc., the CPF in certain communities that they are able to liaise with because they share common meetings in those areas. For example, in a rural area, it's not uncommon that SAPS has a meeting with all the schools, all the churches, all the other organizations in that area to then concentrate, the kind of efforts from a safety perspective. As I said, we encourage the schools to report on these matters. They report to our call center. One of our first responses to them will be lay a charge at SAPS. We get the case number. My colleague, Mrs. Van Ster, the Chief Director for Districts, she's the chairperson of the Prov Joint Subcommittee for School Safety. They sit in the meeting with SAPS. They say, this case number, where is it in your process? Is it still under investigation? Are there any persons that have been found, to have been responsible for this? When are they going to court, etc.? And we then get feedback of each individual case as it has been logged. So that's what we do in those approaches. Of course, the safety of staff is paramount as well as of learners is paramount in all of our schools, and we encourage that the school safety committees fulfill their obligatory function in order to ensure that safety of staff and learners at the schools. Thanks, Chair.
I think just as a supplement to the Honourable Pat Lacker's question, the impact of fiscal uncertainty in this year was really significant. I mean, earlier in the Standing Committee on Education, I took members back to the 29th of March 2023 when I tabled the main budget. And part of that main budget, you may recall, was setting out a very ambitious infrastructure program, the Rapid School Build program, where we had committed to building 21 schools, which would have been unprecedented. And it was, as the HOD says, sometime in June when we got wind of the potential budget cuts, when fiscal uncertainty kicked in. And for a period between sort of roughly June and December, there was a period of really significant fiscal uncertainty. The prospect of, as the head of department has said, unprecedented in-year budget cuts. And as a result of that fiscal uncertainty, we were just simply unable as a department to commit to capital projects. And as a result of that, we built far fewer schools than we had committed to. So the impact of that fiscal uncertainty was really very significant and hit this department hard in the 2023-2024 financial year.
Thank you very much. Is Member Lekker's got a follow-up, and then Member Syed. Member Lekker first here, and then Member Mkontlo after that. Member Lekker.
No, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the responses, but I have a follow-up, particularly having heard the responses that came through. If then the budget cuts causes fiscal uncertainty, I want to ask, to what extent does the department makes use of the additional funds that are then allocated by the National Treasury to address some of these things? Because I want to believe that there were funds allocated by Treasury, and perhaps out of those funds, instead of not allocating some of the money and send it back or do whatever, but there is monies that are not allocated out of that budget. So why not then take those funds and see if they cannot be what we call an appropriation? Because there's funds that are being allocated after those budget cuts. So why not make use of those? Thank you.
Member Syed.
Let me just add the second question to say, how much of the allocated budget was then used and how much of it was returned back? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Syed.
Chair, thank you very much. Chair, I note the settling of the Masekame matter, especially as we've been taking it up here. I hear that one person was given a written warning, but that, in a sense, if I looked at the SIU recommendations, it's not exactly the same outcome or kind of, let me not say punitive, but measures that the SIU recommends. I just wanted to get a sense as to, I'm not saying that it was wrong, I just wanted to get a sense as to how was it concluded with regards to the engagement with the SIU on this particular matter? Was it reported to the SIU that, look, this is how we've dealt with it? Then what was the SIU's response? Just that type of thing. Thank you.
Member Nkondlo.
Chair, my follow-up on the question of the BBBE, I just want to ask, this AOS system that is being referred here, you know, it says that there is an attachment. Can you refer us to the attachment? Where is this attachment? And you see, Chair, how I'm struggling with how the department answered this question. This is a public document. An ordinary person, because let's assume beyond us will even have the opportunity for you to come and present this report in front of us. How an ordinary person is going to know an AOS and how an AOS respond to the question of whether you are implementing the BBB. You know, I'm really not understanding. I'm also just asking if I can be referred to this AOS and how do I make a relationship of this AOS with the BBB. So I'm expected to try and read the AOS and for myself try to understand and that yes, you are implementing. Is this how the department chooses to answer this question? My new question, Chair, is that if you consider page 154 to page, I think it ends, I think I just want to speak on this thing of the internal audit. I think it ends at 158. In the discussion with the AG and the internal audit, there is an issue about a recurring issue with the department on the reliability of performance information, which is some of us who are members of this committee or who have been members of this committee, we know it's not new. The AG also confirms that this has been recurring for over 2 years. That's the word from the AG. And the internal audit says, yes, they do engage with the, I think both the minister and the HOD on this matter. And the question is, What is it that is making the situation not to improve with the department? If indeed, in terms of your internal control unit, in terms of your internal audit relationship, you appreciate the role of the internal audit, the role of the AG, in as far as auditing is concerned. So for me, I think, Chair, as we said, that let's ask this question when the department is here. And I'm asking it here in line with the internal audit, that what is it that is making this particular department, particularly on performance information, that there is a query by the Auditor General about reliability of that information. So if the department can explain itself on this matter.
Thank you very much, HOD.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Maybe just to handle the questions, before I handle the questions, I just want to ask if Mr. Eli, you can deal with the question of the AOS and the PPP. Okay. And then I'm going to say something about the findings, but then Mr. De Vega, our Chief Director, who is responsible for the performance information, he will talk a little bit about the technicalities of why we find ourselves where we do. So firstly, maybe just to indicate just that in terms of the money and so on, Chairperson, we spent 99.9% of the budget. In a 33.3 billion rand budget, in the end, we spent 99.9%, and I think we had something like 34 million. I may have the number incorrect, but it's 30 odd million that eventually we couldn't spend. And obviously, when you get to the end of the year, you've got to decide in a big department like this, because we're like a big oil tanker, at which point you stop expenditure so that you don't overspend. Because I had to come in front of this committee and say we overspent, that would have been a more serious thing, Chairperson. So we did spend 99.9% of a budget. We do have the largest budget in the province. I do feel that we did what we were supposed to in relation to that. As far as the SIU is concerned, yes, Mr. Sayed, the matter is settled. The SIU was informed. As far as the, if Mr. Eli could perhaps just talk specifically around the AOS and PPP, if you can just first start with that, Mr. Eli. We're able to talk about that, please. The AOS and the PPP. Oh, please, thank you.
Yeah, Chairperson, around a question around the AOS system in terms of the BBE compliance performance. I think that was oversight on our behalf. But what that was referring to is our AOS system, and in our AOS system we have particular annexes attached to that as well. So I think it's maybe just an oversight on our behalf. But I think I can, if the committee wants to have a copy of that, we are able to supply that to the committee. Yeah, Chairperson, that's it from my side.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Chairperson, just on the indicators, I don't want to just speak generally. Oh,
just what I think, Member Kontlo, because it was in the Auditor General's report, then we can give them specifics. I know you're asking because of the controls and why it's not picked up and why is there no improvement, but in the AG's report here, on the following pages that we're going to deal with, then we can give you specifics, then you can go through it one by one, because it's outlined here in the AG's report. So I'd rather do it that way, so rather do it that way. Don't answer it now, so we'll do it that way. Okay. Is that governance done? Governance? Member Lekker?
My question was that out of the additional funds allocated, why not attending to those? That was my question. And not on the actual budget, but on the additional budget.
Yeah, remember, like I said, you got additional funding after the budget cuts. Why did you not utilize that? That is a question. So I know you said this is the amount we spent, but you said you got money after the fact, after the budget cuts.
Chairperson, in most years, in most departments, in terms of our government and the way we actually work, most departments get more funding in the adjustments estimate. So we would have already factored that in. Point about the budget cut in the middle is that because we got two big drivers of costs. One is our teachers and the other one is the buildings. So we can't respond quickly to that. We have to have 3-year planning windows. We can't just decide today, oh, we're not going to stop building the school, let's start building the school. So it's just that we did get a little bit of extra money, but Chairperson is basically to plug holes inside the system for smaller things. That's it. Not in the billions. That's it.
To plug holes. So there's still holes, they're just plugging some holes.
No, also because my question said, and how much of it gets to be used, and if there's something left, how much of it gets to be retained or was retained?
Person, if you may.
Yeah.
It was a pertinent question.
I did explain that my answer, but I'm going to say it again. We returned 34 comma something million. Mr. Eli can give the exact figure. Okay, we returned 34 comma something million on a 30.3 billion rand budget. It's fractional. That's what I want to say. If we just think about the numbers and understand it's 0.01% Chairperson. It's very small. I know that members may come and say, well, it's not small, because that 30 million could be used for something else. But remember, Chair, every department is not overspending in this department. There's no department that's got a zero balance. No department that appeared in front of you has a zero balance, because all the accounting officers have to do a responsible thing at some point and say, we're going to actually pull up brakes to get to the end without overspending. On a 30.3 billion rand budget, it's a huge oil tanker. If you decide you want to berth in berth A in the harbor, 50 miles out, you must decide. That's where it is. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to give Member Petrus, that's online, opportunity to ask you, and then Member Nkontlo, Member Petrus.
Thank you, Chairperson. In terms of that budget, that 99% that we spent on the budget, that was it was an adjusted budget, or was it upwards adjusted or downwards? And we must keep in mind that there was also rollovers, if I'm correct, Chairperson. Can I have an explanation on that?
Okay, we will get to specifics with the finances when we get to the annual financial reports, because it's explained there, and we can deal with that there, Member Peter. So we will deal with HOD. We will deal with that when we get to those explanations. Member Conlon, can we move on? Thank you very much. So governance is done, and now we're going to page 199 to 239 PFMA compliance report. Members, over to you. Let me just ask my favorite question first. Favorite question. I'll give to the other members where they can look at the others. But invoices paid, page 205. Invoices paid after 30 days or agreed period. And fractional and all of this, but 141 is 141. What we said and what we've seen at certain departments is that they put at the bottom to say explanation, because this doesn't look good. Like we always say, this is a public document, so there's no explanation. You might have paid it on an agreed period, but then you can say there everybody has been paid on the agreed period or whatever the case may be. So if you can just for note taking, I know it's a small amount, but members of the public read it, then it makes more sense when there's some explanation. Some of the departments doing it already, some of the departments not. Member Kotler, over to you, and then Member Lekker, Member Syed.
Thank you, Chair. Considering that we are in Scopa here, even if the money is 1 cent, because it's a public money, we have got a responsibility to ask about it. So I just want the HOD to understand that we are doing our duty the same way that he's doing his. So we get paid for looking at the cent of each department, even if when you look at your bigger budget, you are dealing with billions, 8,000 rand may not be an issue. The first one, Chair, is that I just wanted some clarity on page 200 about this irregular expenditure. I'm not necessarily able to get a sense what exactly is happening here, and there's no notes actually that explains it. Maybe the department can just give an indication. because I see 100 here that was condoned in this current financial year coming from the previous financial year, if I just read literally. But maybe the department can give more meat to this. And what is the meaning of a case that is sub judice? Sub judice to whom? Because here we are once again in a scoper. We need to understand what has happened. So I would be interested to understand this matter under B here that is said to be sub judice. And then my second question, Chair, is on the, what do you call it, procurement by other means. And I wish to go back to the Masipami. Surely that report would not have sat with us as COPA, would have sat with the standing committee, and perhaps Chair would want to get a report as SCOPA about the matter, because the issue of Masipami was out there in the public, and I see Masipami actually is back again in the department, contracted under these extensions. I think they've got 2 extensions. I'm just trying to open. They've got 2 extensions. I think it's page 207 and 2. Let me see. My apologies to be clumsy on this one, Chair. Yeah, I think is on 207. They've got 2 contracts that have been extended. Generally, I think the question we've been asking about extensions is to explain them. And I see perhaps it's a standard practice within the department, given how you work. Maybe you can explain to us about your extensions here, particularly of this Masipami that was a under question in terms of the triple PE. I see that you are still contracting with it, because I would have thought that it would have been redlined by now.
Thank you, Member Lecker.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start with the latter question by Member Nkondlo. What whether there are standard operation procedures, particularly with service providers that in my little mind would have been redlined, like must come. Does the department have measures to ensure that companies that have undergone a particular scrutiny, does the department ever does business with such? So if maybe we can be taken through to the process of the maybe what I can term as standard operation procedure. Then 2, Chair, would be around the issues of injury on duty. I want to check in respect to that. What measures are in place in ensuring that those affected are taken through a process of rehabilitation without any prejudice? Thank you.
Syed, you covered?
I'm covered by Member Nkondlo and Member Lecker. Thank you.
Thank you. Just maybe 204, the GG accidents. If you can just explain what is the process there. Thank you very much. HOD, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. I think we take note of your recommendation just to provide a reason for the late payment. But Chairperson, just to say to you, we do monitor that. We provide a report to Treasury on a monthly basis, so it is under scrutiny. Sorry, and we look at the reasons for those underpayment. Well, for the payments not within 30 days. Chairperson, just coming back to the issue around the 100 million rand irregular expenditure as well. So just to start with the definition, obviously, what is irregular expenditure? Irregular expenditure is when you have a contravention of a law. In this particular case, there are SEM processes that happen in the department. If I look at the 100 million rand irregular year, which was condoned, it means it gets taken through a process. We submit that to Provincial Treasury to scrutinize that, and then they do the condonement process in terms of this irregular circular. But just to take an example, in 100 million rand, we have a contract with a service provider that provides school furniture. We had a particular interpretation of the specifications relating to that particular contract. The AG had a different interpretation to that. These are legal interpretations around the specifications, what gets included and what doesn't get included in that particular contract. We then referred that matter to legal services. Legal services then were in agreement with that. And then chairperson, we had to stop the contract. Although at that stage, we already delivered school furniture to schools. And in terms of the process that was followed, it was an open tender and there was due processes that was followed. But chairperson, you would appreciate these days in the legal domain, there's different interpretations of things. You can put the matter before two judges and they will give for the exact same case and they will give you two different pronunciations. So that's the technical engagements we're having with the Auditor General. They are obviously doing their work. And we have a duty to agree or disagree with them as well. That's just part of the engagement because they act independently. And in this particular case, we had this particular matter, and then we wrote to Treasury for the condonement of that. And that was what was being reported here. I'm using that as an example. That's the process we go through. In terms of condonement, we have to provide Provincial Treasury with reasons for the process and where things have gone wrong. And then we also have to give indication about consequence management if applicable in this particular case as well. That's in terms of the irregular expenditure framework that National Treasury has released. So we do everything by the book, but again, there are different interpretations in terms of the SEM rules and regulations as well. And it's not intentional to incur irregular expenditure. I think Chairperson, we aim for zero irregular expenditure. That's our aim. But yeah. Then there's a matter around sub judice that we've mentioned in here. Chairperson, I think Mr. Sayed has now left the meeting, but he mentioned in the meeting this morning around the CETA matter. So for the local area network that's in our schools, that we're installing, we use a service provider for that. That is to support us in terms of our e-learning strategy. So just to give the members a bit of just a context around that, the province have installed the WAN, the wide area network, and then from this outside the school to inside the school, we have what we call the local area network. And then that connect to the classrooms. And that's where the teachers, what they will call smart classrooms, they connect either via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, or there's lines running, and that allows teachers to show learners either through a computer projector or whatever to conduct their lessons in that regard. So that's the context around that. But to procure that service of installation, we have to, for all contracts, we have to follow the CETA law. And then we go to the CETA Act, and then we go to CETA for the procurement of that service. In this particular case, CETA informed us, once they've gone through that process, they informed us that we can award the contract, which we did. We have no doubt to doubt the internal processes because we don't have sight of that. They are a separate legal national entity. And then obviously there's confidentiality around their particular processes. So we awarded the contract based on the letter we received from them. Then later on, other matters arose at the CETA level, not at the department level. Obviously, it's got implications for us, Chairperson, in terms of service delivery. And we got mixed messages from CETA itself around this particular matter. So what we decided to do as responsible corporate citizens, we decided to take the matter on review. We take it through our legal processes just to make sure that before we do anything else, that we follow due process. So that if we do come here again, Chairperson, that we can report to you the outcomes of that particular legal process. And that's why we were transparent with Scopa to say, we have this particular matter, it's subject to sub judice, and we have to wait for the outcome of that as well. We are engaging with legal services in Department of the Premier, and yeah, that is now a legal matter, and we'll take advice in terms of the way forward in that regard as well. So, Chairperson, there's in transparency, we are reporting it to Scopa in that regard as well. Okay, so that's just around the CETA matter, around what is called the contract with the Blue Network, which was mentioned this morning as well, regarding that. Then, Chairperson, just in terms of SEM, the National Treasury instructions is quite clear around what the accounting officer can do, what they can't do. In this particular case, the accounting officer is allowed to vary and extend contracts. The only requirement is, apart from the SEM process that must be followed, is that we must inform Provincial Treasury and we must inform the Auditor General of these contract variations and extensions. So that's the only requirement around that as well. There are thresholds, but that's the only requirement in terms of reporting as well. So we are allowed in law to vary and extend contracts. What is happening with the annual report, National Treasury has, because this is guided by National Treasury, this the format of the annual report, they've allowed more transparency in terms of the process so that there's more oversight around that and members can then ask questions from Scopa's side. So that's so that we bring it here. But relating to Masekane, despite the matter around the SIU, Masekane, and I don't want to pronounce it on the because it's a court matter, but in terms of South African law, that company has not committed an offence in law yet. It's subject to a court matter. So we take our guidance from National Treasury. National Treasury has a database of suppliers that we're not supposed to deal business with. Okay? We consult that database. And this contract with Masekane was subject to audit as well, because the Auditor General also looked at these matters as well. So we are still allowed to deal business or to do business with Masekane, subject to us following the SEM processes as legislated. So these two contracts were open bidding processes, and they had to comply with all the prescripts that goes together with that. They had to be tax compliant. They had to deal with whatever criteria was laid down that everybody else had to comply with. We took it through our bid committee. We took it through our processes and all the authorizations around it as well. So we had to comply with the prescripts. I want to emphasize that we don't get a misunderstanding in terms of what we're doing and why the name is here. So we do have contracts, but those contracts, as we given through parliamentary questions in that regard, because it came up in parliamentary questions, we have given those facts to already Chairperson to say Masekane has committed no offence from that perspective. It's still at the court matter between the state and them, but they're not on the list of suppliers or companies that the state can't, because we have to consult with that. National Treasury, they're not on that list either. So we are allowed to still do business with them, and we are allowed to extend the contracts, as I explained previously. It's still in terms of law. We had to extend the contract for these two contracts. It's for cleaning materials and stationery contracts for our schools. And the new contract, which was subject to an open bid, that contract will commence on the 1st of November 2024. But that's obviously another allocation, Chairperson. But I'm just saying to you that that's the reason why the contract will be extended, because we want to conclude on the new contract. I obviously can't say here whose bidder will have been awarded that thing, because that's obviously the new financial year. But just to say, that's the reason for the Masekane and the questions relating to that. Let's be clear around that. Then there was a question around a SOP, and I think I've tried to explain that, Chairperson. National Treasury, it They just say, okay, if there's the one issue around suppliers we're not supposed to do business with, that's a National Treasury database. Then you have a situation where you have, I'm speaking now hypothetically, where you have a contractor that does not deliver on its contract. You can then report that to Provincial Treasury and to National Treasury as well. There's a process you go through before that contractor then appears on that list of contracts you shouldn't be doing business with. So, as I said, I'm talking hypothetically, Chairperson. So there is a process in government in terms of the question around the SOP. There is a process for that. It's laid down in terms of law of what process you must follow. So if we have a contractor that didn't deliver, we have to write to Provincial Treasury and say, can you please, for example, red list this contractor for better work? And there's a process of that we go through before that National Treasury list that particular company as well. So that's just in terms of the SOP with service providers. Then I'll ask Mr. Cronje just to report on the injury on duty and rehabilitation. But just coming back, Chair, before Mr. Cronje comes back, I just want to talk about the GG accidents there because it's reported as losses. Chairperson, I mean, this department is quite huge. We have a district office in Mugadedavas. They use well over 200 vehicles. So accidents, you know, whether a person bump into a pole or whatever the case might be, it's been happening for many years now, where we have accidents because I mean they drive around. We also have vehicles being hijacked as well and then stripped. So these are losses to the state that we have to account for. And then there's a due process that follows from there onwards in terms of reporting to the police. And then obviously, if there are negligence, we then try to recover that money. If there's no negligence and it's part of the duty or the normal duty of that person in execution of the duty, then obviously we have to write off that. But in terms of the write-off, there's quite a process we follow up in terms of the PFMAC to write off that loss to the state as well. I don't want to elaborate too much on that, but there's quite a process, and we can provide that procedures that we follow to SCOPA if necessary. Thank you, Chairperson. Mr. Cronje.
Chair, yes, thank you. In terms of the injury on duty, there is a prescribed process that is followed. Excuse me. For any injury that is registered with the Department of Labour in order to access then further support in terms of any expenses incurred. And then the person do follow the go to their medical practitioners or government hospitals if they do not have a medical practitioner, and then any expenses incurred is then basically sent to the Department of Labour to compensate for any expenses. If there's any psychosocial issues also prevalent in any injury, then we do provide support as well through our wellness program to the person.
Thank you very much. Members, follow up on that? Say follow-ups? Member Conley, you got follow-up?
Chair, maybe we'll deal with the Masikame issue in the resolutions. I think that would help so that it helps us to get a better insight about what the department is responding to. I just want to ask, I think, on the contract variations, and I want to give comfort to colleagues that we understand fully well the process of PFMA. We understand fully well that the contract variations and expansions are legal and are allowed. So when we ask question, it is not because we are casting any aspersions that we have done anything illegal. That is why it's here in the report. The question that I would like to ask, I think in the earlier departments, I'm not sure whether it was the first one, which is the premier one, I think there was the issue of when a contract is extended, what is allowed is actually for the extension to not be more than I think 30%. Was it 30% or 10%, colleagues? I'm just trying to remember the percentage, and I'm sure the colleagues would deal with these issues as they enthusiastically educating us. They would know. And I just want to know if I just look at on page 206, if I look at the nutrition service there for the MOD, I think it's Peninsula School Feeding Association. If I read correctly, the original contract was about 89,956. And there's an expansion. Can you just explain to me in context to that particular role of the percentage? Is it something that is within or it is outside? And I was actually, because I'm not familiar with your education environment, even unable to understand what is the meaning, of these values. Because remember, as you present here, as required by Treasury, it also, the information must make sense to us. And I think this is one issue we've been keep on raising to colleagues who are writing annual reports. Don't write as if you are writing for yourselves, because you understand what is the meaning of this, because an ordinary person may not be able, will always struggle to understand what you mean here. And these books are about public money. So I want you, if you can use that one of number 2 in just explaining, that principle of the percentage within that you must be within when you are extending a contract and how it's applied in this context. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Marais.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to ask the department in terms of the learner transport, page 210. When it comes to contracting these learner transport, it's a very costly for the department in transporting children to school. Is it a once-off 5-year contract that the department enters into with transport, learner transport? And is there reviews built in terms of quality and perhaps even ensuring that certain things are still in place in terms of learner safety and so forth? Are those type of provisions all built into your contracts when you do sign 5-year learner transport contracts? Just wanted to get some assurance in terms of that, because I think that bill is going to increase as more and more children come to the Western Cape. And we are in the space where we have to cut costs where it's possible. I also know of schools that do not offer learner transport. Is that information also perhaps available in this particular report where there's a need, but the department couldn't meet that particular need for learner transport? Thank you.
Thank you very much, members. HOD.
So, yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Just to come back to the issue around the contract extension. So, as I explained, there's particular criteria we have to apply. So, first of all, the HOD can approve it. However, if it's above 15% for goods and services, 20% for construction contracts, then we must report it to Provincial Treasury and to the Auditor General. That's the requirement. That's where the thresholds come in. So if it goes above a threshold, then it must be reported. When it comes to the NSMP, which you've asked on page 207, yes, we run a contract for NSMP. It's quite a big contract. We feed just over 500 million kids every day for about 199 days. So it's quite a costly exercise, and it's in just over 1,000 schools, given the poverty in the province. So in this particular case, Chairperson, when we go out and tender, it's based on particular assumptions, and we ask suppliers to build in their cost as well, which is what they would normally do. However, life happens. And we know that for the past number of years, post-COVID, we've had quite a number Chair, if you go to the shop, you see the price increases every time you go in. I've heard later recently from newspapers, there is a kind of inflation is not so much as it used to be. But for this particular year, there was food inflation, and the suppliers came to us to say, look, we can't operate on the prices that we've given to you. Look, they have to obviously provide the motivation. They have to also look at their suppliers. We need motivation in that regard. And it goes through a particular process, go through a bid committee again, before we allow the authorization for price increases. And that's why it's here. It's a practicality. And the same will happen for learner transport as well. In learner transport, we have increases because of learner numbers, changing distances, and also changing prices as well. But Chairperson, just to say to you, there is a procedure for this thing in terms of which is prescribed by National Treasury, which in terms of process we have to follow just to make sure that, again, like members say, it's taxpayers' money, that we follow due process as well. And then the other caveat to that is the Auditor General also consider these matters as well as part of the audit to make sure that these are valid expenses. And due process was followed in that regard as well. Chairperson, HOD, just if he wants me to respond to part of the LTS. Yeah. So, and I'll just respond to the member partly in terms of the learner transport. So the actual bid document that we put out is subject to legal vetting. It goes through a legal process. In the past, we did consultations with the contractors because there was a legal case many years ago, and we then take it through legal services just to make sure that it can comply in every respect. So the issue around learner safety, that is one thing that's contained in there in terms of we have what contractors must do in particular criteria. They have to have supervision on the buses. Okay. And coming to the safety issue, they must roadworthy the buses every 6 months. That cost they must build into their price as well. Then we also require our school principals to look at those buses on a daily basis in terms of time, that they deliver on time. And they just to have a visual inspection also of the bus to make sure that these buses are safe as well. So there are quite a number of procedures built in that they have to comply with. Obviously, when that 5-year contract is up, we then go through a process to identify if the need is still there. Just for the members' sake, we spend just over 500 million rand on learner transport annually. 80% of that learner transport is in the rural areas. So Cape Winelands is one of our biggest districts in terms of the use of learner transport. And obviously, in the meantime, Chairperson, we also build schools. So that need gets looked at regularly as we build schools, because the idea on learner transport, if the classrooms is not within 5 kilometers from where the learner lives, we have to bring, so to say, the classroom to the learner, and we use learner transport to get there. If I can explain it like that. So if there are schools being built, then there's no need for learner transport anymore. We also devolve schemes to governing bodies where schools can run it themselves. But again, it is an ongoing cost benefit analysis that we do. I think learner transport has been in this department for more than 20 years since I came, and I don't see it happening or disappearing very soon. We also have, in the farm areas, you have also learners moving between farms, and so to say their parents are farm pickers, so they move between areas as well. And we have to make sure that they get to the schools as well. I'm not, Chairperson, I'm not sure, SG, if you want me to say anything, or Mr. Abrams want to cover anything else that I might have missed.
I need your answer. Okay. Thank you very much. Member Marais, follow up? Yes, you may go.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the response to the department. Just wanted to know, perhaps I'm not comfortable that there are sufficient controls in place in terms of learner transport. but that's something I will take up with the committee. Then the other thing I wanted to ask is the 500 million being spent on learner transport. It's quite a big sum. Is there anywhere in your report that you also refer to the number of learners that are actually being transported to justify the 500 million? Or is there another way? The reason for the question is we need to look at ways of cutting costs. Yes, we are going to have to spend money, but infrastructure, the need for infrastructure that's closer to where children are, perhaps is the solution going forward. Do you have that figure available for the department? Thank you.
HOD?
According to my records, Chairperson, table at the bottom of page 32 of the report, we transport 67,425 learners on a daily basis. Feed 527,234 learners and transport 67,425.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. We're going to move over to the finances. We're going to move over to our finances. I'm just going to throw some base, member, the Kondlo, that you can build on that, because that is the question that Member Kondlo will ask. But if you go to the Auditor General's report, Part F, it gives you Program 2, Public Ordinary Schools, and it gives you Program 5, Early Childhood Development. So that is the two areas of concern where the department got an unqualified opinion with financial statements, with material findings. And it says basically that on the audit, the pre-objectives, predetermined objectives, the department actually regressed. It says here in the Auditor's General report that the material, where there were material misstatements, it was not corrected. It says further that the department could not properly verify the evidence supporting reported performance achievements and its review processes. It also gives further indicators, but I'll give the members opportunity. But the main problem, and Member Petrus also asked this question early, the information could not be verified. Information could not be verified. It says that, and the indicators was your, it's in 245, it gives you 19, 20, 21, and then at the end it's 24. It says manager did not correct all the misstatements, and I reported material findings in this regard. It gives more, but I'm going to give, I know Member Nkondlo had some issues with that, and Member Petrus had issues with that, but then I'll also give other members, it was about your predetermined objectives that could not be verified, and so your audit opinion has remained unchanged for the past two audit cycles. So I'm not going to delve in that, Member Nkondlo. I think you must delve in that because that was your question. I just gave some background. Member Nkondlo and then Member Petrus, and then I'll see if there's other members. Thank you.
No, thank you. No, thank you, Chair. I think you've already foreground, I think, the question one has, and as I think is stated, we try to get answers from both the AG and also the internal audit, which both of them referred us to yourself as the final arbiter on this question. And I think it has to do indeed with particularly the issue of reliability of your performance information. And we say, considering that the AG would have then audited or sampled different program or indicators for this financial year, but also the AG does agree that this matter has been recurring. And I think we are also some of us advantaged because we have said in the SCOPA before that this seems to be a challenge as observed by also previous audits around reliability of information. And I think that in a nutshell, I think is a question we wanted to understand. Why is this matter seemingly not being, not going away? What exactly are the challenges? And as also, I think in the management letter, I'm sure of the AG, it would have been raised. The internal audit also did mention that they've raised it with yourselves. So would like to understand from yourself, what is the problem with this and at what point are we getting to remove this particular observation in your audit? Particularly for me, I'm interested in the reliability of your performance information, because if your information is not reliable, it then casts aspersions on what you claim, to have done. If the information as evidence, is and cannot be trusted. Thanks, Chair.
Member Petrus, you had a question on this?
Yes, Chairperson, it's just a follow-up. Chairperson, there is a implementation plan between the department and the audit committee about the internal control measures to monitor it, and also yes, the reliable information. But still, we experience problems with the implementation of this. But by now, surely we must know where the problem lies, Chairperson. Can we have an answer on that?
Thank you very much. Member Side, was your hand up or not? No. Okay, thank you. Covered. Okay, thank you.
Chairperson, so I'm going to ask Ian De Vega, Mr. Ian De Vega is Chief Director for Business Intelligence Management, but he's in charge of the collation reporting of the performance indicators. But what I want to say with this, Chair, is that we are struggling particularly with something called MTSF indicators, for which there are no technical indicator descriptions, and so some confusion in relation to how we should treat it and what we should report on. And so Mr. De Vega will indicate what those dilemmas are. Because normally, just to explain to the committee, when you have an indicator, you develop what's called a technical indicator description. You talk about where you're going to collect the data, who's going to collect the data, by when will they collect the data. If you look in our document, you will find it there for every indicator. However, for MTSF indicators, there were no technical indicator descriptions. So confusion reigned about how should we report this. I'm just giving that context, but I think context is very important. Because in the end, I can't leave you with the impression that the department has actually done nothing to try and address this. That is incorrect, Chairperson. We have actually tried to report it in a way that we thought was correct. Obviously, the auditor has pointed out various things, and Mr. De Vega will talk to us about those things. And Mr. De Vega will also talk about how we hope to not repeat these findings, specifically on the MTSF indicators. So with that, Mr. De Vega, can I hand over to you, please? Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Chair. So as a department, we put extensive processes in place where we've really reviewed our kind of reporting platforms and the response or like accountability framework, where responsibility managers basically review all the indicators and the TIDs to align it to SMART principles. So I don't think the issue is on the indicators that were in the annual report per se and the reporting thereof, because we have credible information there together with credible evidence to support that. Where it comes in is where the SG has highlighted. It's the MTSF indicators that has not been included. Now, the MTSF indicators, which are your medium-term strategic framework indicators, which links to your NDP or your National Development Plan, those were not included. Yes, the AG has informed us the prior year that if it's not included, you will get a finding. The problem with that is, if we include the MTSF indicators without its requisite TIDs, then that's a finding in itself. And the reason why we could not include the MTSF indicators into our APP on two fronts. Number one, coding and robotics, which is part of the MTSF indicators, was not promulgated until 6th of June 2024. So putting that in your actual performance plan is then null and void. There's no system in place for you to be able to implement it. There's no curriculum to implement for that, together with your heritage languages and so forth. So the long and short is, as a department, we want to comply, but in order to comply, we need technical indicator descriptors, and technically the TID development is the responsibility of the sector, so DBE. And according to the guidelines for sector output indicators with concurrent functions, the DBE is responsible for the development of these sector indicators, the TIDs, as per the MTSF. And the rationale behind that is that if you want to measure MTSF at a national level, there must be coherence across the platform. DBE did not, at a national level, create these TIDs for the MTSF. And as a consequence, there was nothing for us to report on. What we have done is we've included the MTSF indicators as an Annexure H in our annual performance plan, and to some extent reported on that in the annual performance report, but was not under the performance tables. So to say that our data has regressed, we've put a lot of processes in place, belts and braces, to ensure that our data is actually very robustly reported. It's on the medium-term strategic framework that was not included that we were found wanting. Thanks, Chair.
Member Syed and then Member Nkontlo.
Chair, thank you. It's very interesting, just the response on the MTSF indicators. I just wanted to get a sense then. So is the department saying that DBE is responsible for developing provincial TIDs? I just wanted to, I'm a bit, or is it overall TIDs nationally in the whole sector that they've got to, because I'm just a little bit confused. Thank you.
Member Nkontlo.
Chair, my interest on this matter with colleagues is that fortunately I think the Chief Director confirms that this matter was raised with them even in the previous audit. In the space of what the Chief Director is saying, what would have been the engagements between yourselves and the DBE? And perhaps this is one thing, because DBE is not here, you see, for us to get also their side of the story, you see, because we're running one curriculum, and that makes perfect sense. We're running one curriculum that must deliver to children of this country across. So perhaps, Chair, for me, I'm interested, firstly, for the department to explain that, because the HOD says, I'm not sure whether he says what the AG is saying here is incorrect, because this matter was raised, and even your internal audit said they agree with the report of the AG. So I'm not sure which part, according to you, is incorrect. But I'm interested to know that during the time that the matter was raised by the AG, that this could potentially create problems for the audit of the department. What engagements have been there around the TIDs? As I hear now, as I hear them, that the problem here is the TIDs. I think a challenge for the department, because there are things that have been put in place and what must happen, you know. And I think one of the things that we have kept on saying in the SCOPA is that sometimes part of what helps is for footnotes to be put, because this thing of comrades, this thing, when we are in meetings of this nature, that you find that, you know, the officials, you know, where we have a combative relationship, where people feel that, you know, when we're asking questions, you feel like you're asking a wrong question, I think must come to an end, because we've got a responsibility here. And when we do not see something here and we do not understand it, we've got the right to ask colleagues. And I think that is one thing I would like as a spirit that you must leave this SCOPA this year, so that we don't agree, come back to this kind of a spirit, that we need to understand, so that if indeed there are some issues from where you are sitting, at least if you put a footnote, it helps us to have context so that it's not like we're these, members who do not understand what we're doing here. We really make an effort to try and understand our work. So I would like to get that answer first. What has been the engagements with the department, especially DBE, around exactly the issues you are raising, Chief Director, and what has been their response and what you would suggest around this particular matter, because it seems it's going to recur, until this particular situation is resolved from where you are sitting. Thanks.
Answer. Let me just give you some of the recommendations, because I see the Chief Director Business Intelligence should adequately, this is so small I can't even read it, should adequately review reported achievements to ensure that they are aligned to the indicator as defined in the technical indicator description, and further ensure management business process is set up to produce an indicator in line with the technical indicator description. It also gives some recommendations to the Chief Financial Officer. We will read that later on, and also give some recommendations to the HOD. So we have some recommendations here from the Auditor General that you will be communicated with, but we will, from our side, I think I want to agree with Member Kontlo. When we look from our side, we are looking at, this is a reoccurring. You've got the internal audit, audit committee, you've got the AG, there's discussions, and I trying to understand if it's 2 years in a row, how did you know what you should do? That is the discussions we had with the Auditor General. How can you not solve this problem? And I know it's enormous, but I think what I see, I don't know if the AG and you are on one page with this, because it seems to me they have a different approach and you have a different approach. According to us, this should be solved and should be, because with the engagements and the audit committee, and you've got all the controls, but we still have these findings. So in that spirit, like Member Kontlo said, it's to make the Western Cape Education Department better. That's our job, not to criticize, but to make it better. And that's why we're doing our job. Thank you, HOD.
No, so let me start by just indicating that we're not here to defend. You asked for an explanation, Chair. So what we are giving you is an explanation as to why do we have this finding. Part of our difficulty with the TIDs was that these are national indicators, so that the TID should be developed nationally. It's a national indicator, and so that's a difference of opinion. The AG is saying you should develop your own TID. We had argued, no, it's a national indicator, there should be a national TID coming, and it didn't come. So essentially, this is what we're explaining to the committee. However, we're going to follow the AG's finding now. AG has made a finding. The AG said we must do TIDs, we will do TIDs. Even though we think that's slightly, we have a little bit of a difference of opinion about that, but we're going to do what they say because it's in the report. So we will develop TIDs for these indicators, and then next year when we appear here, hopefully this stuff doesn't actually occur again. I think what Mr. De Vega just tried to do is give you an explanation as to how this actually happens. The sector, in other sectors, if you take other departments in this government, health and others, they have TIDs developed nationally for their MTSF indicators. We just didn't have for our sector. So I think that's where perhaps just say the mismatch came in, specifically on this issue of the MTSF indicators. So Chairperson, I don't know if that suffices in terms of issues. I don't know if Mr. De Vega wants to add anything else. You may do so. Chair, with your permission.
Thanks, SG. Chairperson, just to say that we have taken up these matters with DBE. We've got a HEDCOM subcommittee, planning, monitoring and evaluation. And every minute you would see that the Western Cape has fought this very hard, the MTSF indicators, the development of the TIDs, indicators that needs to be driven. These are sector indicators that need to be developed. And with the concurrent powers, DBE has to actually develop it on behalf of the sectors. So we are engaging DBE now with the MTDP indicators and ensure that this doesn't happen going forward. that we have indicators that actually can be, that's implementable, that's smart. So, smart indicators with specific, measurable, auditable, reliable, and then time bound. So all of those factors are things that we are actually engaging on directly with DPME as well as DBE in the room. The MTSF indicators, by definition, as the SG has mentioned, this was an issue not just in this province. Every other province in the education sector got a qualification for MTSF indicators, and every other province has cited exactly the same reasoning, is that it was unimplementable. So, but be that as it may, it is a finding, and we are responding to ensure that it will not happen next year again. Thanks.
Very much. Yes,
No,
actually.
to make the point that it doesn't matter whether we agree or not. We have agreed with the AG now. Whether we agree outside, it doesn't matter. We've agreed with the AG. We have to develop things, which we will do, that we don't have a repeat finding. That's basically it, Chair.
Member Council, does that answer you?
Chair, no, thanks. I actually, from what the Chief Director was saying, I think maybe indeed as a committee, we must just make a resolution on the matter. Because I think for me, I think the response of the SG, I think, is a response between him and the Auditor General. Perhaps we'd leave it there. But I think our interest is really in the ability of the department to both implement, and be able to get reliable and verifiable data for indicators. Got nothing to do with the fact that I'm complying because I have to comply. I don't think that's the attitude we want to take. Actually, I think for me, it's important what is being said, whether if you consider both in the education sector or any other, whether such national indicators, can be developed at a provincial level or must be developed at a national level. What's the best method? Because when all is said and done, we can take what the SG is saying and come back here, with even bigger problems. And I don't think we're members for that. We're responsible here. So for me, I think it would be prudent for us to have a conversation about this matter so that whether the department in trying to comply and not get a finding will do what the SG is saying. But I think substantively, it's important for us to understand at what point, of relevance is it, and maybe we need to write as the committee, as a SCOPA, either to DPE or through the minister somehow to find some a way somehow that's going to ensure that when all is said and done, this particular indicator does not become sort of a nuisance and just something to to tick the box, but it's something substantive that we can be able to realize those MTDF sort of MTSF. Is it what now? MD, yeah, those things.
Development plan.
Thank you, those things, yeah. Okay. Okay, members, let's move. I think we've exhausted that point. I think the HOD said, listen, this is what we'll get over this and we'll get a better report next year. So, I mean, we're okay with that. Yeah. Members, let's move on with the financial report. Your page number and then the question, please. I'll just throw out one while you're paging. I'm looking for my other page here, but I'm just looking at where's my other page now? Page 275. It's a decrease in examination and education related services. All that I want to know, did it have an impact? Did it affect any services there? Because there's a decrease and we're looking at examination and education related services. And then there's a whole page on 277. And with 277, the advertising. So if you can just explain 277, the goods and services, the advertising, it's doubled. the catering has almost doubled. So there's a couple of things that doubled. If you can just, but catering, advertising, I know, if you can just explain that. And then I'll give that's my two questions, members. I don't want to break my own rules. Member Lekkers next for her too.
Thank you, Chair. Page 277 on the decrease in infrastructure and planning services. I want to understand if there are delays, what then becomes the consequences thereof, and in relation to the reprioritization of projects, other timelines in that reprioritization, and in respect to those delays, what then happens, particularly to service delivery? Thanks.
Is there any other members' question? Member Kondlo?
Yes, Chair. If page 279 under property payments under 4.6, perhaps if you can just explain to me in a layman's terms, which are these maintenance and repairs of buildings are being referred to here under 4.6, and then on page 282. I just want to understand, I see that there's an ECD employment stimulus relief funds that were paid, and then it says included in revenue to be surrendered. Can you just explain to me, does it mean that the 25.8 money has been surrendered? Because we're talking, I think, after. Is it money that has been surrendered back to the Provincial Reserve Fund? Is that what this means, or am I reading it incorrectly? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. HOD?
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Just in terms of your question on page 275, the decrease in exams related services, it was part of our cost-cutting measures, Chairperson. So we've taken the risk into account when we do that. So there was no impact in that regard because I think Mr. Lawrence is here. They just looked at their processes and they came up with more efficient processes of achieving the same. That's just in terms of that. Then, Chairperson, and in terms of your questions on 277, I just want to refer members to the bottom of 277. There's notes there. If you can just have a look at it, Chairperson. We've made notes for you guys at the bottom. So advertising is mainly, the increase is mainly due to the advocacy campaigns for the placement of learners. I think we spoke this morning about the pop-up centers. Those things all cost us money, and to do the radio advocacy and the newspapers, those all cost quite a bit of money just because we're obviously covering the whole province. To make sure that the admissions process is successful in that regard. Then, Chairperson, as far as catering is concerned, there's obviously now more physical engagements, but again, it is to do with this morning we spoke about learning losses and the progress around that. There's a lot of training involved there, a lot of workshops. Chairperson, I think you spoke about it this morning as well, the Saturday class and so forth. So we have to provide feeding there as well. So that's where the cost is coming from as well, Chairperson. So that's just in terms of your question. Then I think the question was around the infrastructure and planning services in terms of the delays there. Chair, I'm not sure if Mr. Eden want to respond to that particular matter, if there was any particular.
Yes, I can, through the chair. So yes, I mean, the question is twofold with regard to the change in financial allocation. Infrastructure planning is a multi-activity, but in the year under review, the reprioritization comes from two places with a budget cut. We think about scheduled maintenance, particularly the nature of the work in the infrastructure portfolio that typically is impacted are the short-term work. The bigger problems for infrastructures around the major capital expenditure. It's very hard to stop and suspend a project and restart it, given the supply chain that one has to reignite. And specifically, that comment comes on the back of additional hurdles to clear in the replanning and resetting up of projects. There is a full cycle of, again, specifying the project scope, getting through the environmental and other regulatory controls, and planning generally is where the time is gobbled up in the context of infrastructure delivery. So to get a budget shift or a reprioritization, and there is a healthy amount of risk consideration one has to take year on year. We are not covered for disaster emergency relief in this budget, Chair. And so in the year under review, we've had, of course, emergency-related interventions that were needed as well. So that gives context to the reprioritization. We don't abandon those projects. There's then an ongoing rescheduling and reprogramming of each part of the portfolio, whether it's a short-term maintenance project at a school or a big new school build. Those would just then continue in the ensuing years as we manage the impact.
Chairperson, just in terms of page 282, revenue to be surrendered. I'm not sure if that was the right page, because on page 284, at the bottom, we talk about heading revenue to surrendered. The department did underspend this year. I think the HOD spoke about that, of the 39 million rand. And then 11 million rand of that, 11 million rand of that was for rollover for the MOT program. And then the other part, 27 million rand, we had to surrender to Provincial Treasury as well. So that's where the reconciliation gets performed. Obviously, so that's where the reconciliation gets performed, and we have to surrender to Provincial Treasury those funds that wasn't committed or anything else. And so therefore we have to surrender those funds. I'm not sure if that's the question was posed on page 282. But I'm referring to 284, where we deal with funds to be surrendered. Right. Yeah.
Chair, it's the question was on page 282, the first paragraph. That was stimulus funding that was allocated in the time that this program was still with DSD, in the time of COVID, to support teachers in ECD centers or employees at ECD centers. Let me not use the word educators. And that funding stimulus was still in progress by the time the function shifted to us. So it's not voted funds. It's not part of the allocation of the department. It's not part of the ECD programs funding. And we basically just concluded the stimulus allocation from that time, because the mandate was now with us. We were responsible to close that stimulus allocation, and it was returned to the department's bank account physically as money, and we returned that money to the national fiscus. So we were basically a conduit to return the money back to the fiscus, so it does not impact our appropriation statement or our spending performance in the financial year. It was just us facilitating the return of the funding to the fiscus.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I just ask two, and then I'll allow you again to go to 279. Note 4.5, consumables. I can't understand household supplies, that massive decrease there. It doesn't make sense to me, that massive decrease there. And then on 280, 5.1 is, what is the other losses there referred to? And just a comment, I see foreign travel has decreased. I always ask that because other departments increase, I see you decrease. So well done there, department. Member Kotla?
No, thanks, Chair. In the footnote, or in the notes there, I'm not seeing an explanation about, in page 277, about the doubling up almost of the admin fees. Perhaps you could explain that from the previous financial year to the one that we are looking at. 277, the first under goods and services. From 12.5 to 25,057. Oh, it's advertising. Oh, okay, okay. I think my ruler is skewed. my apologies. My apologies on that. Chair, the question I actually have a question on the infrastructure. Given the fact that I think on one stage here we're with the Department of Infrastructure, I think it's not here in the book. I just wanted to check with the department whether they do have with them what is the backlog of their infrastructure maintenance as a department, and if so, what is the quantum of that and the amount? And I'm raising this because this is something we took up with the Department of Infrastructure, and they did raise that part of their biggest challenge across, in particular in departments like this, is a backlog on the maintenance budgets. So I just wanted to ask that question. It's not here in the book, Chair. That's my.
Thank you very much, Member Said.
Chair, no, thank you. Mine was a follow-up to your comment on the travel, international travel. Now, I know you've indicated as a chair that it's a positive thing that the international travel has come down, but I'm not necessarily sure if it is a positive thing. It may be in terms of cutting of costs, yes, but I'm a bit then concerned. I wanted to get a sense as to what is the reason as to why the foreign travel has come down, because my understanding is also that given the fact that we need to consistently learn from experiences in the rest of the world, we need to exchange ideas. Is it because there's been a decreased focus on that particular aspect, or I just wanted to get a sense, or is it because of basically cutting of costs? Thank you.
Thank you. So if the costs go up, we'll criticize. Go down, we'll still criticize. HOD?
Chairperson, it seems we can't win here, right? Doesn't matter what we do, we can't win.
I
now,
feel compelled to now embark on an international travel program.
No, I do understand the Chairperson. I do understand the concern of the question, because it's almost in relation of like, so you're not relevant in terms of cutting edge what is happening. But I think we need to also understand that there are, in our view, there are basic things which need to be fixed. When we talk about system improvement over time, there are basic things that need to be fixed. So we've concentrated on looking to us. What are these things? And it's not like we had no travel. We did send people to Japan and wherever. And it's just that the numbers that we have sent out, we focused the energy, perhaps other people who are doing teaching and learning, on looking at what is actually happening right here. It's not to say we can't learn from others, because what you can't also see, Mr. Said, is the number of seminars and things that people do attend that are international. Okay, on the interaction, but okay, we take the point that you've made. Next year we come with a big number. You're going to say, why did we not travel? But I think I'm just explaining that the focus of the department is try to get the basics right to improve the system. That's really what we try to focus on. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Chairperson, just around the question around the decrease on page 279 around the household expenditure. So you'll see in the previous year, 2022-23, it was 43.6 million rand, and this year it's only 1.6. In 2022-23, that was the last of the PPE purchases for schools. And that's why we're not doing it anymore, Chairperson. So that's why there's the decrease there. Then, Chairperson, your question also around 280 for other losses. Other material losses written off from 29 in the prior year to 50,000 rand this year. I think, Chairperson, what happens there are very small accounts. It makes up very small accounts with small amounts. And that's why we put it under other. So you can't say this is the predominant amount there. But what I can assure you, Chairperson, where losses are written off, there's a procedure for that. We first look at, in terms of loss to the state, whether we can recover the loss. If we can't recover the loss, or if we have to put it through another process in terms of trying to collect the funding, only after we've exhausted all the avenues will we write off any loss in that regard. So that amount consists of many bits and pieces of smaller amounts that we couldn't classify into the other categories has been written off as well in terms of that chairperson as well. Then I think SG, we're going to talk about the infrastructure.
Yeah, Mr. Abrams.
Through the chair, thanks, honourable member, for the question. So it's my attempt at an interpretation is quite a complex question. Maintenance would be preventative maintenance, scheduled maintenance. In quantum, that backlog is just under 5 billion rand at the moment. It's about 4.9. But I say it's complex for two reasons. The context is important in the Western Cape. We're on the oldest school estate, and many of the assets, the school assets, are over 75 years old. And so, and then half of the estate, arguably 50%, was built during the apartheid era. Structurally and by way of materials use, inadequate and insufficient to withstand climate and other conditions. So the context for preventative maintenance is typically built up around what we should be spending every year to restore functionality to the assets, and it's about 1,500 schools or thereabouts. What would we need to spend? And there are industry standards around it that puts that at somewhere around 1.7% of your capital replacement value. If we add up the capital replacement value of our schools, it's about 80 billion rand. So in our portfolio management, one factor is, do we have the budget allocation to spend 1.7% every year to maintain functionality of the assets? So that's some context to the backlog statement. The other one is performance. These are not small endeavors. And so being routine and being successful at implementing our maintenance projects as scheduled is important as well. So they happy to share the context, but 5 billion is very definitely a number we review every year in the context of our analysis. It is not, to be clear, to be conflated with a 7 billion rand backlog to restore our infrastructure to meet minimum uniform norms and standards, which is typically the context around what we call in the Western Cape and elsewhere plunky schools, or schools that are made of materials that are not appropriate. Significant multi-billion rand backlogs that we have to think about in the context of planning priorities and dealing with risk. And so all of that aggregates to more than just a description of the number. 5 billion is a significant number if we think about the financial allocations to the program over an MTEF cycle. Thank you. Happy to share the detail behind those numbers as appropriate.
Other questions? I just want to ask one question on 288. I see provision was made there for note 20 for Minister Mania. Did you know something that we didn't know, or how does this work? Page 288, note 20. Note 20. The money that was made available, exit gratuity. So that's why I'm asking, did you know something that we did not know, that you made provision for Minister Mania to exit, and he's still with you? So maybe you knew something that we didn't know, but that is just in jest.
I think the converse, you might know something I don't know.
Chairperson, Mr. PC behind me here is Director Accounting. This is accounting question, I agree.
Okay. Okay. Not entirely unwelcome news.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, this is a provision made for the members of Parliament. It's governed in terms of the regulations, depending on the extent of stay they've had in Parliament. So the gratuity is built up, and it was also in preparation with the elections that were upcoming. It's a guide around the financial regulations on how we should disclose possible legal obligations that we may pay should a member exit. Thanks, Chair.
I've not had a very good day. I've not had a very good week. In fact, I've not had a very good month, but things are perking up.
Members, is there any other questions? Is there no more questions? Can we, Member Lecker? Member Lecker, you got a question? Your microphone? I will say microphone.
Perhaps, Chair, I need to get an understanding in relation to the assets that have been written off in page 293. Yes, under section 27. I want to get an understanding, Chair, whether that 27, section 27, I can link it to section 26.2. Are we talking about the same thing here, or it's two different things? Those assets that have been written off, are they a product of this investigation, or what exactly is happening there? Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions? That's the last question. Thank you. That's the last question, actually.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, in terms of the asset management each year, in terms of the policy, there is a stock taking process that takes place. If assets are not found, then they are put under the investigation whilst we do not know what is going on. Then the assets that are written off, it's assets whose potential in terms of the condition, they are regarded as no longer having a service potential, and then they would be written off because they are broken, they are old, they can no longer service the department. So that's where the write-off comes off, the first one. The second one, it would be related to theft and losses. So assets that are stolen, there would be a process in terms of reporting crime, having a SEPS report, us investigating if there is any negligence from an official who's responsible for the assets. And then there would be, after the investigation, a conclusion of the investigation, and that asset would be written off in terms of the theft and losses process. So that is what is grouped there under assets written off. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, continue.
Just to link it further to the question from the member, you've got disclosure note 26 and 28. They are not referring to the same disposals. 26 is specifically your minor assets in terms of the definition. That's more your equipment, furniture, and things in the office buildings. And that's why it's under investigation. If a chair is moved, we don't just write it off immediately. We will first make sure that the chair is really missing or just moved. Whereas the disposals under 28 refers to our immovable tangible assets, buildings and structures. And yet it's not a school that's being written off. It refers to our prefabricated classrooms. They do have a useful life, and some of them from time to time get to a point where we dispose of them because we feel they are no longer safe and viable for use for educational purposes. So that's a disposal on 28. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That concludes the session. I'm just going to ask the Minister and the HOD to do concluding remarks, and then I usually have a lucky draw. The lucky draw is on Member Syed to do the thank yous. Over to you, Minister.
Chairperson, thank you to you and also, of course, to the committee members. We obviously have done our best as a department to respond comprehensively to all your questions. And I want to be very clear with honourable members that we take your questions and your inputs extremely seriously. So thank you for the SCOPA session this afternoon. I have to say that as a result of your question, this has been one of the more pleasant SCOPA meetings that I've attended. So thank you very much.
Chairperson, maybe just before you close, just to announce to you that Ms. Feldman, sitting behind me here, is going into retirement, and she will be leaving us at the end of the month. And obviously she's got the two directors there who will be keeping us up. But she will be missed, and we just wanted to mention it to you. A key component of the WCD, and has been for a very long time. She's retiring.
I'm so glad I asked Member Syed, because I mean he's a long-standing member of the occasion, so he can do that as well. Thank you, Member Syed.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I did not expect this as a visitor to SCOPA. The lucky draw. But no, thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. And let me also just again Wish Ms. Feldman everything of the best. I think thank you for your many years of service and dedication to the public. Yes, we do always hold the department accountable, but we understand that it's also your line of work and you enter public service because you want to serve. There are other sectors that we can all enter into and focus on making profits. But you have entered the public service to serve South Africans and to serve the people of the Western Cape, and we are grateful for that. So thank you very much. And then just to thank the Minister, the Head of Department, and the entire team for coming here today, for presenting. Yes, it was a robust session. This is the nature of the manner in which we basically exert pressure, the manner in which we ensure that our residents get served. So you must understand that, and we do appreciate the fact that you respond, and we'll most certainly be putting more pressure on you, but it's not so that we can put you into a corner. We do this so that we can actually improve the quality of work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. HOD, the meeting adjourned. The committee will stay behind for resolutions. Thank you very much. Thank you, members. I'm going to ask Mr. Davids to read the resolutions, and then if you have any additions to that, we will then add. Thank you very much, Mr. David.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, through you, Honourable members. Resolution number 1 is that the Audit Committee engages with the Public Accounts Committee on basically its role, its mandate, and how it conducted its quarterly oversights over the department in response to the predetermined objectives and the audit outcomes that the department received for the financial year under review. Chair, then there was another one for the draw or a copy of the, in terms of the BBBE, the AOA system. The department said it will supply that. Chair, the Masikama trading report, the department said it will supply the committee with that report, Chair. And Chair, basically, most of the resolutions comes from the TITS chairperson. The department indicated that it's busy developing its TITS for in terms of its indicators for WCD. Is willing to brief the committee on that. Then there was a concern which will go in the Scopa report, chairperson, regarding the reliability factor in terms of the performance indicators. Basically, Memom Kondlo asked if the Department of Basic Education and WCD can engage Scopa on that matter. So that's a resolution, chairperson, just a briefing on that. And then, chairperson, on slide 12 of the AXA briefing document, Chair, you've requested that we just place those recommendations to the department from the Auditor General in the scope report for the noting for next year, chairperson. Chair, then there's just a documentation that the department indicated that it will supply the committee on the maintenance backlog of 4 1.9 billion rand for over 1,500 schools. The department said it will furnish the committee with a report on that, Chairperson.
Is there any additions, member side? And then member Lecker?
Chair, as a guest, let me just include, Chair, just to say that, and I was a bit concerned, and I'm sure other members as well, just with the handling and the discussion around the national indicators and the TIDS issue, and I see it was mentioned, I wanted to propose that we actually, or that SCOPA actually calls for a meeting in the same venue with the AG as well as the department, and get them both to present in the same meeting, actually have a conversation with each other whilst questions are being asked, and then the Education Standing Committee members get invited to that particular meeting. Because for us here, it's not the real issue here is the inclusion of national indicators and not really TIDS. TIDS is basically a symptom for me. I think so, to make the conversation one around national indicators, and the TIDS issue can come as part of that. Thank you.
Member Lecker, and then I heard member Peters. I don't see the hands there. You can see it there, but member Peters, you're after member Lecker.
No, thank you, Chair. I actually want to say I am covered by Member Khalid Sayed, but I think it's important to have a conversation with the Department of Education in understanding, because you would remember the AG said some of their recommendation with regards to the MTSF have been implemented, some have not been. So we need to have a conversation with the department to actually find out as to how far they have gone, particularly with DBE, in trying to be on the same page with one another, even if it means whatever conversation they have, but we must be taken on board, because this is a matter that has been flagged in the AG report, and as such we would want to know any updates so that we are kept abreast, because seemingly they don't talk to DBE up until the audit process starts. It's not the first time that it's happening. If I hear correctly, even last year it was there. So they don't converse with one another. They only converse during this period. So we need to keep them abreast. Thank you, Chair.
Member Peters?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, if the information, let's say some of the information is not reliable or correct, and there's a problem with the internal controls, then the report to us is not 100% correct. And I want to ask that we must look into that seriously, and that you as chairperson must add a time frame maybe in which they must rectify this whole situation around the information, reporting, and the internal controls.
Thank you. Noted. Mr. Davids put that down. Member Nkondlo?
Chair, mine is on a different matter. I'm covered with all the others and I support them. Chair, I think I'm just, I think on the irregular expenditure and the explanation that was given, I'm a bit worried about what was explained as differences of opinion in interpretation between the department and AG. And perhaps maybe we can ask the department to just, provide a written explanation on those two matters that are there on irregular expenditure, and explain in what exactly are these issues where they differ with AG. And I'm raising this because I think sometime, if it is not in the 6th Parliament, but I would recall that there was a situation where, because of this difference of opinion between the department and the AG, we had the Department of Agriculture, being unable to have its audit report finalized for almost, I think, a year or two consecutive years. And that led to us unable to do our own oversight. And I think we need to really get into the space so that it doesn't get to that point. So I think it's important just to get some information from the department. And I think once we get the information, we may then maybe decide if we need to ask the AG together with the department so that we find mechanisms. Because also I thought at some point, Treasury, Provincial Treasury did indicate also, I think when we're explaining the entire process, that before they even go for taking each other to court, the Provincial Treasurer, I think there's a mechanism that when there's a difference between the department and the AG, Provincial Treasury comes in, as another leg to sort of resolve disputes or misunderstanding. So I'm just worried that I picked up that there's a similar instance here, but I would want to understand what's that issue and the veracity and how can it be mitigated before it escalates further. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Is that everything? Everything? Members, there's some refreshments in the members' lounge. Please to indulge. We pay for that. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.